So as we continue to evolve and learn as a country, language is a huge part of that process. And whether we realize it or not, there are outdated words and phrases that we still use in everyday conversation that can be disrespectful and hurtful toward Indigenous people in this country. Holly Fortier is a Cree Dene from Fort McKay First Nation in Alberta. She is the founder of Two Canoes Media and an educator running Indigenous awareness training with her business, Nisto Consulting. And she's joining us from Fort McKay First Nation. Holly, welcome.
Good morning, Anne-Marie. So happy to be here with you.
Holly, I'm so grateful to have this conversation with you today. You've gone through and you've picked 3 common phrases that people may or may not understand are outdated, and we're going to talk about why. Can you go ahead and start with the first example?
Well, I do want to say to start off with that, like you said, language is important. And I think that a lot of the verbiage that people are using really was influenced by media. And I will say, 100 years of cinema, starting way back with the silent movies, we were portrayed in such a poor way. We were seen as dangerous or drunk or dying. And so, people have called us, like even growing up, people called me a wagon burner, a savage, the whole scalping joke. And, even today when I think about it, people have developed unconscious biases. They don't know where they got these notions from, but it's usually from something that we see, gets in our mind, and then we speak it, right? So I was in a Zoom the other day, and this woman, I like her, but she did say, we were wrapping up, and she says, okay, well, let's call the cavalry. And I was like, that comes from that misconception on film. And then another person said, okay, well, let's circle the wagons. And I was like, oh my goodness, are we still using these terms? And so, like even in meetings, people will say things like, there's too many chiefs in here, not enough Indians. Well, for one thing, there's only one chief per First Nation. I know, of course, like corporate Canada has like CEO, CFO, COOs, so we have chief-to-chief meetings. But in our culture, a chief is a person of honor, not just a casual, nickname for someone. The other thing is a lot of people say in a meeting, okay, let's get this powwow started. And powwows for us are a cultural event and not just like a gathering, right? So words are important.
Yeah, Holly, what would your response be then to somebody who said, I use that phrase, but I don't mean it to offend? Is it still okay then to use it if you're not meaning to be offensive?
Well, I'm sure, Canadians are known for being kind, for being nice. And so I think the majority of people are not even aware of that. And so I think that conversations like this really help us and, make us aware of that. And I always say to people, when you hear this, don't beat yourself up like, oh my gosh, I misspoke in the past. I was using cultural appropriation. I was being politically incorrect. And I say to people, don't beat yourself up. There's no perfect person. But when we know better, we do better. So let's just do better.
Yeah, help us along that path then, Holly. If your posture is a position of learning, which, that's a position I always like to take, what then can you do to change some of the words and phrases or language that you may be using inadvertently, using outdated phrases, and you want to change it?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I love what, the late Honorable Murray Sinclair said is, when he's referring to after he compiled the report from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, he said, education got us into this, education is going to get us out of it. So I would say to every Canadian, go educate yourself. Let's learn better. Let's do better. When we honor the First People, then we're honoring our country. And so that's super important. And, Anne-Marie, I think the number one question that I often get asked where people make mistakes is people are like, what the heck do we call you guys now? So if you bear with me for a moment, I'll walk us through it. Okay. There's 634 First Nations. There's 574 federally recognized tribes in the United States. And so everyone had an original name in an original language. Then when Christopher Columbus came over in 1492, he thought he had landed in India. So we were called Indians since then. But in 1982, the government of Canada said, let's put proper terminology around it.
Right.
So they came up with the umbrella, the Aboriginal peoples of Canada, for the three distinct groups that we have: First Nation, Métis, Inuit. Then in 2016, when the United Nations made a declaration there's rights for Indigenous people around the globe, Canada said, well, we have three distinct groups of Indigenous people. We adopted UN DRIP and we changed the terminology to Indigenous. So my advice really is, like, you can forget all that and just ask people how they self-identify. Find out whose traditional territory you're on. Be respectful to the peoples and communities that you're talking to. And but if you're unsure, use the term Indigenous.
Oh, Holly, always great information. I always appreciate our conversations very much. And listen, it is early out there at Fort McKay First Nation. You know, you're up before 6 a.m. for us, so we appreciate it, Holly. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I hope everybody has a great day. Thank you, Anne-Marie.
Thanks, Holly. If you liked that video, make sure to subscribe to the Your Morning YouTube feed, where you can find all kinds of new content posted every weekday morning.